Another day, another... never mind. Well, at least time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Are you not entertained?
Not as much as we were last time, but yeah, I had fun. From the highly inappropriate conversations that we had over on Discord this year, to those unexpected very indie games that dragged us into their worlds for dozens of hours, we did have a lot of fun. And I'd like to seize the opportunity to thank all the 10,300 and something of you that keep coming to the channel, especially the something. Because the more of you that keep coming, the more likely it is that this channel will see the end of 2025 as well. And most especially to the Discord dweller crowd for all the endless hours of fun and degeneracy. 2024 might have not been as spectacular as 2023 with all the highly praised titles that flooded over the AAA space and the indie world alike. But that gave us the chance to revisit some of those more demanding best of all times games and cut through a larger number of titles like a nitpicky squirrel looking for the perfect tree to call home while the winter lasts. And surprisingly, in the dark confines of the indie world, I did find a couple of trees that I might be willing to spend a few hundred hours in, and I think all of that is worth celebrating. Welcome to You Old Entertainment Game of the Year Award. A most solemn ceremony in which we celebrate those games that we played and reviewed during the year. Some of them did come out in 2024, some of them have been around for a while, and some are timeless classics. And I just think it's fun to pit them all together into one chaotic mosh pit of times and eras. As you know, every game that we've played and reviewed this year is eligible, and that includes recommendation videos, standard reviews, 5-in-1s, 4-in-1s, 30-something-in-1s, etc. This year we went through a few too many titles to mention individually, so here's the list of titles that we played. And because the category system that we use to rate CRPG seems to be the most comprehensive, that's the one that we're going to use for this ceremony. And these categories are character creation and character progression, gameplay, story and lore, companions lore-wise, companions gameplay-wise, secondary mechanics, user experience, sound effects and mix, music, voice acting, graphics, performance and stability. Best game of 2024 that actually came out in 2024, and of course the You Old Entertainment Game of the Year. But unlike this other Game of the Year award that you watch to get high on all the announcements of games that you aren't going to play later, I have no fancy trailers to show you, and I wouldn't dare to show myself in a dress like this. So let's get to the meat, shall we? Coming up first is character creation and character progression. And this is all about a game giving you the means to take on its challenges however you see fit. Just as in real life, some people thrive on being hot, some make it through by being insanely smart, and some, well, I guess some just get high rolls on luck. But if a game has dialogue, combat, exploration, this, that, and the other thing, you should be able to do all of these things your way. And these are the games that did a better job with that this year. Alaloth, Champions of the Four Kingdoms. Alaloth is quite a refreshing little indie game that provided players with an interesting character creation and progression system with a lot of moving parts that have quite an impact on the gameplay in ways that you don't usually expect in an ARPG. Your race, for example, determines your starting location, the kingdom in whose name you have to fight, and some of the quests you'll be taking on. The importance of your alignment, for example, might not be readily obvious at first, but as you progress through the game, you'll see that some people may be willing to tag along for the ride because of it, and some other people may be more or less keen on sharing information or quests with you depending on whether you're good, neutral, or evil. Also, the skill and attribute systems are quite different from the ones you usually get in an ARPG, but they still feel very right for the type of gameplay that Alaloth is going for, and they still allow you to shape your character along with the items that you find along the way into the type of combatant you want him or her to be. There are various melee combat disciplines, cleric-like magic, wizard-like magic, summoning, etc. You also choose the faction that you want to be a part of in your kingdom and the deity you want to worship. And during the early access, and even when the game first released, These things only had a marginal impact on the experience, but the devs keep adding stuff to make them more and more important with each update, and I think this deserves recognition. Caves of Qud. Don't let the lack of cast-specific talents fool you. The array of possibilities that you have in Caves of Qud when it comes to the different builds, tactics, and overarching strategies that you can go for is insane. This game has almost endless replay value, especially if your thing is to experiment with different build and approaches. There are mutations, implants, a slew of items that you can craft and modify in different ways that go from grenades with different effects, to melee weapons that can be modded to do damage over time, or to apply extra Y conditions such as stun or freeze. You have gun turrets, different types of armor, and I could go on forever. Caves of Qud features an absolutely brilliant character progression system. Dragon Age Origins. You may only have 3 classes and 3 races to choose from in Dragon Age Origins, but man, talk about making them count. Not only do you have 6 completely different origins with completely different starting locations, NPCs, and origin stories, but all throughout the game, everyone acknowledges who you are and where you come from if it makes sense for them to do so. You have to deal with prejudice if you are an elf commoner, you are completely lost in the surface, and you always get taken for a merchant if you're a dwarf, and you get treated with deference if you're a noble. And the game acknowledging your choices on the character creation end of things comes in the form of cinematic cutscenes and dialogue lines, no less. The game does go the extra mile to make you feel immersed. Your character is a reflection of his or her people's idiosyncrasy, and that plays a part in his or her journey in the world of Thedas. Gameplay-wise, each class has a broad array of talents and a few specialties that you can use to fine-tune your character to your preferred approach, to the point that you can have a mage with the arcane warrior specialty, another that leans mostly into primal magic, and yet another one that specializes in creation magic, and have all of them fulfill completely different roles. And then you have skills like Persuasion, which has a major impact on how the main and secondary stories unfold, to the point that you may not be able to get some major outcomes if you are not very good at it, just as some outcomes are only possible if you are a mage or a dwarf or an elf or a human. No other game in my opinion comes close when it comes to the narrative impact of your choices, and this makes Dragon Age Origins a no-brainer to nominate for this category. Knights of the Old Republic. As a young man who had always been a huge fan of Star Wars, and who had recently discovered the beauty of 3rd edition D&D, Knights of the Old Republic's character creation and progression system was a match made in heaven. And choosing the type of Jedi you want to be in the world?
Shut up and take my money!
And this isn't just for show. Every time there's a combat encounter in this game, you can see your tactical design with all its strengths and weaknesses coming together. Every tactical move that you pull by making the most out of the synergies between your skills and those of your companions, every effective use of a resource that you make because you planned your game around it, everything is a product of your choices. Also, talking your way out of predicaments or being able to enter a room to get valuable loot because you are good with hacking or lockpicking, or just straight up being able to circumvent a challenge because you have the right skills or the right personnel with you, all of this constitutes the very essence of the RPG experience in my book. Outward. Outward doesn't let you choose a class or a race. It doesn't have attributes for you to allocate, and you don't level up. And yet, this is one of the most brilliant character progression systems out there, because like every other aspect of the game, it's baked into the game's core premise, which is to venture forth into the unknown and make your own way to your own goals. And by the time you finish the main quest, though you are probably still going to have hundreds of hours of adventuring ahead of you, chances are you are going to look back upon what your journey has been so far, to the times in which you only had a primitive club that you enhanced precariously to add bleed damage to your tactical arsenal. You're going to remember that perilous journey into the Mana Mountain that took you one real-life day, and finally granted you the magic power that you needed to make the most out of that skill that you learned from that old hermit who lived in the ass end of nowhere. A place that you had to get to by braving an abandoned cursed ruin in harsh weather over an entire day's journey. You're going to look back at all the recipes you learned, the crafting you did, and you are going to think,
definitely worth it.
What a journey this has been, huh? Wantless. This game came out of nowhere in 2024 to become one of the most fulfilling tactical experiences of the decade. Games like Desperados 3 and Tactical Breach Wizards offer a fun and varied array of skills that work in creative ways and can be combined to overcome the game's challenges. Well, Wantless allows you to create your own skills with various different talents, components, AoEs, constructs, and on top of that it has this delicious talent tree and a slew of equipable items to make your build even stronger or to make up for the weaknesses that it might have. And this is made even better by the system of patience and rewards that the game has and the various ways in which you can gamble. Hell, this game might as well be called Character Progression the Game. Truly awesome stuff, and I 100% recommend you give this one a shot if your fun comes from experimenting with a game's different builds to overcome brutally punishing challenges. And the winner is... Dragon Age Origins. Gameplay. When it comes to rating and ranking the gameplay aspect of a game, I always feel like I'm using a highly subjective, chaotic maelstrom of variables that go from the fun factor to how memorable the experience was, to how likely it is for me to pick it up 10 years from now and give it a second or a third spin, to the replay value. And many of this year's nominees have a very strong blend of all of those things. And these are the nominees.
Beneath Oresa.
I just discovered Beneath Oresa this year, and it quickly became one of my favorite card battlers of all time. And I don't think it's even a hot take at this point. Beneath Oresa has the most interesting cards and card synergies out there, period.
End of discussion.
Each faction has very strong and clearly defined mechanics, and then each of the faction's members has his or her own way to make the most out of said mechanics. The companion system is super clever and the game is just plain fun to play. Even playing cards in succession to watch the animations play out as combos is insanely fun.
I am a fan.
Caves of Qud. Well, talk about the hero who saved the day in the nick of time. Caves of Qud came out after almost 10 years of early access development during the final stretch of 2024 to present a very solid candidacy for Game of the Year. It's a player-centered experience that takes emergent gameplay to a whole new level. It's challenging and varied, it features deep mechanics that also feel super satisfying to master, and the feeling of accomplishment that you get from tackling the game's goals feels like something old, like something that you just don't get from games these days, because it's all about overcoming seemingly unsurmountable odds and feeling great once you are at the other end of the struggle. Truly fantastic game that is also lining up to be one of the best games of the decade so far. Dragon Age Origins. This is a cinematic, epic journey that puts you in the driver's seat of a Grey Warden. There's an evil, larger-than-life threat looming in the horizon, and it's up to you to stop it, and the odds are stacked against you in every way imaginable. And this premise provides some of the highest stakes and some of the most glorious feeling of adventure that you're ever going to have in a game. But the game is also just plain fun to play. It features an excellent combat system with fantastic synergies and a tactical panel to make all your party members' talents work in beautiful harmony amongst many other things. It's an epic adventure that never gets boring, an adventure that challenges your tactical abilities and ends with a brilliantly satisfying outcome. What more could you ask for? Knights of the Old Republic. This is a non-stop tour de force of proper Star Wars fun. From the races, to the matches of Passag, to the intense climactic moments of the story, to the puzzles, to of course its combat encounters, Knights of the Old Republic is the whole package. It is the perfect marriage of cinematic storytelling, proper RPGing, and just plain unmitigated fun. Outward. It's hard for me to put into words all the things that I find endlessly fascinating about Outward. The adventure aspect of the experience in this game is quite simply incomparable. The feeling of danger, of venturing forth, taking several days to get to your destination, having to sleep out in the wilds, improvising your own temporary shelter with a kitchen and stuff. the way in which every aspect of the game revolves around and serves to elevate the core premise of the game, which is to go out there and find your own way, while not falling into the pitfall of the pointless, goalless sandbox experience. Outward truly makes the most out of everything while not sacrificing any of the core tenets of the genre. Tactical Breach Wizards. I had a blast with this game in 2024. The game is easy to learn, super satisfying and fulfilling to play, and it gives you a lot of freedom to experiment. The story also does a good job of providing thrilling stakes for you to be invested all the way through, and there is something new for you to sink your teeth into in every mission that keeps things interesting without it ever feeling too disruptive or frustrating. It isn't perfect, of course, but the core gameplay loop is as close to perfection as you can get in the genre. And the winner is... Outward. Story and lore. I am a story guy through and through, and I'm always thrilled when I see this aspect of the package done right. When I see stories that are the natural result of protagonists with believable, realistic motivations who set out to do what they need to do and eventually come into conflict with other characters who are equally motivated to achieve something that is completely contradictory with the goals of the protagonist. I love it when characters have things working in their favor and against them, when they have serious flaws or disadvantages, but also excel at one or two things that keep them in the fight. And of the games that I played and reviewed this year, I think these are the very best in this respect. Black Book. Black Book is a thrilling adventure in which the main character, a young peasant witch called Vasilisa, sets out on a journey to open the 7 mystical seals of the mysterious Black Grimoire that her grandfather gave her, so that she can then call on the spirit who can bring her deceased betrothed back to life. But in order to do so, she must negotiate with, convince, or coerce powerful demons into doing her bidding. And this journey takes her on a series of perilous situations that often entail moral dilemmas and brushes with the dark, occult, and mysterious. And the writers blended together their own ideas with tons of Russian folklore and Slavic mythology and distilled it into a unique story that is filled with high stakes and a very satisfying cycle of build-up and payoff that takes place in every chapter. And depending on how you play the game, Vasilisa herself may end up having her own character arc. And it's one of the best I've seen in recent memory. Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins is an epic adventure, epic as fuck even. It's the story of the reluctant hero who ends up saving the nation. It's an unpretentious story that 100% fills the bill of that little introduction with which I started this segment. It's thrilling, fun, and filled with stakes. Everything is the result of characters needing to do something and some other characters needing to do the opposite. The final stretch of the game is the king of final stretches in RPGs, and the outcome, which is 100% the consequence of the decisions you made throughout the game, is deeply fulfilling. Dragon Age Origins' lore is hands down and without question my favorite lore in the history of video games. Everything you need to know about the world and its people is out there for you to piece together by simply walking about and talking to people. There are very few information dumps, and most of the ones you have come from characters explaining to your character, not to you, the ways of the world. Ways that your character has no way of knowing. Like Cardol, the leader of the Legion of the Dead in the Deep Roads, who fills that ignorant human noblewoman in on the ins and outs of the Legion and the Deep Roads. Dragon Age Origins' story isn't perfect, but whatever flaws it might have, it makes up for 1,000-fold with its clever, easy to follow, thrilling, and super entertaining narrative. Griftlands. Came for the thumbnail, stayed for the music. Has that ever happened to you? Well, that was pretty much how it happened with Griftlands for me. I saw some footage of the game that seemed appealing to me. It looked like it had some RPG elements, and I'm always interested in those, and it was cheap at the time, so I said, yeah, why the hell not? And it turned out to be not only a super entertaining game with solid cart mechanics, surprisingly good RPG elements, and very good alternative game modes, but also one of the best written games that I have ever played. I didn't expect there to be 3 different encapsulated stories with completely different characters, but I also wasn't expecting these characters to have such well-defined personalities with clearly defined strengths and weaknesses that were never rubbed in your face to make sure that you get them. And better yet, Every main character is significantly better than the previous one, and this also goes for the plot. Also, your choices matter in the world of Griftlands, and the game rewards you with a very well written Fallout-like final succession of stills narrating what became of the characters you met and even yourself. Truly brilliant stuff. Sovereign Syndicate. Sovereign Syndicate might have failed to live up to many of my expectations, but the writing was definitely not one of them. This is an exquisitely written game with compelling characters who have believable motivations and backgrounds that takes place in a setting whose history and idiosyncrasies are rich and grounded on verisimilitude. It's a story that handles well build-up and payoff, and presents us with characters who stay consistent all the way through, but who also evolve in interesting ways that are the product of the things that they live through. And this all is precious rare in video games in this day and age, and that's why Sovereign Syndicate is a strong contender for this category. The Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge is an ambitious game that features mature writing and juggles with important themes in a nuanced way. It's refreshing to play a game in which its characters care about stuff that's important and don't make a big deal about shit that isn't. And more importantly, a game in which characters aren't trying too hard to be cool. Also, Gregory Rasputin is hands down the best NPC that I've seen this decade, bar none. At the beginning of the game, he seems empathetic and helpful towards Victor, but he gradually demands more and more from him, and as Victor grows weary of his company and his demands, he becomes less amicable and tolerant. And by the end of the game, he's truly become a frightening entity that you wish you had never crossed paths with. Also, the final stretch of the game is an exciting and high-stake ride that made me want to play the game again immediately after I saw the credits roll. And the winner is... Companions Lorewise. This category is all about those who tag along for the ride. Do they have their own reasons to be a part of your entourage? Are they good reasons? How big a part do they play in the grand scheme of things? Do we end up caring about them and about their predicament? Well, these are the games that I played and reviewed this year that did a better job with all of that. Black Book. This game pretty much beat the crap out of my wildest expectations in this category. Your companions in Black Book have some of the most amazing personal quests ever, and they even make up the bulk of your journey and are extremely relevant to your mission. Companions in Black Book all have rock-solid motivations to tag along for the ride, and also very intricate personal missions that are brilliantly woven into the main quest. Missions that are teeming with fantastic magical creatures and locations. Many of your companions are indeed magical beings, or rather creatures who have been possessed by magical beings and have their own very important reasons to join your quest. Black Book is a solid 10 out of 10 game in the companion department and a solid candidate for this category. Beyond Galaxyland. Like I said in that video about RPGs that didn't do it for me in 2024, I wasn't crazy about Beyond Galaxyland. I suspected the kind of RPG that I was going to get when I saw some of the footage, but little old me still had some hope that it would tick some of the boxes of the stuff that I usually look for in an RPG. And while Beyond Galaxyland failed to deliver on some of the most important things on that list, I did end up playing the game all the way through to the end, and if I'm honest with you, I wasn't entirely disappointed. I found the story and the main character's companions to be quite interesting. I'm usually not a fan of humanized animals or excessively human-y aliens, but I've found my little party of adventurers to be endearing. Even Boom Boom and Pablo, which are exactly the types of characters that make me roll my eyes, grew on me over the course of the game. And that's because they had relatable motivations and goals, and because they all found purpose in joining Doug on his adventure. Rosie was the standout companion for me though, and it was refreshing to see a competent female companion that wasn't girl bossing her way out of every situation. Someone who had talents and strengths, which she sometimes saved the day, but who also found herself out of her depth occasionally and needed others to lend a helping hand. Beyond Galaxyland was way better than I expected in this respect, and that's why it gets a solid nomination for this category. Darkest Dungeon 2. In Darkest Dungeon 2, you command a party of broken heroes who fed the worst demons of their nature one too many meals, so they are now sentenced to dwell in a hell of their own making. Obsession, resentment, ambition. These are the demons that torture your band of broken adventurers, and they cannot escape this hell until they confess their sins and come to terms with them. Their stories will not leave you indifferent, and some of them may even shake you to your very core. The story of Bonnie the Orphan, whew, that one surely takes the cake as one of the most disturbing stories in the game, but some of the other ones will surely force you to take at least a small break from your journey to reflect upon what you just experienced at their shrine of revelation. And it's their Kafkian struggle what makes them stand out head and shoulders above the endless sea of shallow tactical assets that you get in most of the game of the tactical RPG subgenre. Dragon Age Origins. Your companions in Dragon Age Origins are the apex of RPG companions in my book. And that's saying something considering that Dragon Age is a BioWare title and that BioWare used to be the king of companions in video games. Used to be. But the guys, gals, golems, and animals who join the main character are not only good because they have distinct and consistent personalities and backgrounds, they are not only good because of their quirks and the humorous situations that come from their interactions, they are great because they are a window into the game's intricate lore. Rather than force-feeding you explanations about the origins of the world and its people, the game has you interact with different people, and it's from this interaction that you'll be able to piece together what the world is like, what Templars, the Chantry, the Grey Wardens, the Dwarven Assembly, the Alienage, and even the Mabari are like. Just the conversations that you have with Liliana at your camp have more lore in them than half the RPGs that come out these days. Alistair and Morrigan also play huge roles in the grand scheme of things, and everyone else is clearly the protagonist of their own story, and that's what every character should be. Hard West 2. Talk about games in which your companions save the day. Your posse in Hard West 2 is a colorful bunch that includes an undead old man seeking closure, a devout priest seeking to put an end to evil, even if that means consorting with lesser evil beings, a native woman who seeks answers about things that are outside the scope of the wisdom of her people. It's all pretty impressive for a game that isn't trying to be all about its story and its characters. But I found this bunch to be quirky and entertaining and far more interesting than they had any right to be. If it had not been for these guys and gals, I would have quit the game long before I reached the end. And the winner is... Dragon Age Origins. Companions gameplay-wise. Some of you don't give too much of a shit about whether or not your companions have interesting things to say or not, or about how relevant they are to the story. Some of you are all about whether or not they get shit done. Well, okay then, these are the games that I played and reviewed this year that did a better job with that. Alaloth, Champions of the Four Kingdoms. Companions aren't really a thing that you usually care much about in a non-party ARPG, but that's one of the many things that Alaloth, Champions of the Four Kingdom does differently. It makes you take these guys into account for your game plan. I, for one, found myself building tactics that revolved around my companion's fighting styles, strengths, and skills. I would do things like let the tanky ones engage the bad guys and then go around to flank them to maximize damage. I started taking them into account when I leveled, to the point that I was even getting some skills that would make them more efficient in combat. And this is something that I don't remember ever doing in an ARPG. Also, the game becomes a lot more fun when these guys come into the picture, and they also have interesting companion quests. Dragon Age Origins.
Yes, of course.
Why, thank you, Liliana. I couldn't have done it without you. No, I literally couldn't have because I can't pick locks. But lock picking is just one of the things that your companions can do for you in Dragon Age Origins. In combat, each of them brings something unique to the table, even if many of them share the same classes. Liliana and Sevron, for example, are both rogues, but their talents and specialties make them very different combatants. Sevron is an opportunist who can join the front ranks, one-shotting frozen enemies, for example, with some of his dual-wielding skills, while Liliana can wear down opponents with her ranged talent and tilt the odds of the battle in your favor with her bardic arts. I, for example, almost always kept both Wynne and Morrigan in my party, not only because magic is overpowered in this game, but because they fulfilled very different roles in the party, and the same thing goes for the warrior types. And you also had your dog and Shale, who had skills that no other party member had. I do wish your companions had a bigger contribution with non-combat challenges though. The game felt a little bit main character centered in this respect. Dragon Age Origins is still a top tier title in this category and more than worthy of its nomination. Dustland Delivery. Companions is how you get shit done in Dustland Delivery. It doesn't have to be that way, of course, you can certainly go for the Lone Wolf Mad Max deal. But the days are shorter and the road is a better mistress if you can share your burdens with 2 or 3 friends. Also, having people take care of the stuff that you're not very good at is always a good idea. Having someone who's good at foraging, for example, can save you from starving, and it can also turn out to be surprisingly profitable. You wouldn't believe the money some people are willing to pay for some of these mushrooms. Also, you are going to get into all sorts of trouble while you are out there on the road. Sometimes you are going to have to shoot your way out of trouble, sometimes you'll have to talk your way out of it, and sometimes you're going to have to use your brain power to figure out stuff. So it's better to have all those angles covered, don't you think? You can embrace many different walks of life in Dustland Delivery. You can go for the CRPG experience and focus on that lengthy main quest with all its plot points and side quests. You can lose yourself in the freedom of the sandbox experience, or you can devote your time to building a city and turning it into a trade metropolis. Or you can walk a middle road somewhere in between all of these things. But whatever you choose to do in this game, you are going to need the right personnel for all of that. And luckily, Dustland Delivery's got you covered. Knights of the Old Republic. Your companions in Knights of the Old Republic are amazing. Not only do they bring different things to the table when it comes to combat, but they can also contribute to your progress in many non-combat ways. Your droids can make a huge difference if you bring them to locations where there are devices that need to be hacked, or traps that may be triggered by fiddling about a little bit with a console. Mission Vow can sneak into places undetected and pick locks of all sorts better than anyone else in your party, and Jedis can play mind tricks on organic beings. Also, your companions can prepare unique items for you while you're on your ship. Companions in KOTOR are quite possibly the best companions that BioWare has given us when it comes to the gameplay aspect of the game, and that is saying a lot. The Thaumaturge. I don't know if you would count Viktor Shulski's Salutors as companions, but if you do, you just have to nominate them for this category. These creatures not only make Viktor a force to be reckoned with in combat, but they are also capable of sorting out many non-combat situations for him, and I love that some of the quests in the game can come to an abrupt end, or end badly, if you don't have the right Salutor for the job. Because you can pretty much navigate this game and its quest in any order, and that means that you are going to meet and recruit, for lack of a better term, some of these Salutors a lot earlier than others. But some of these creatures are capable of hypnotizing, or terrorizing, or shaming people into doing what you want. And their actions might even open the door for some pretty interesting quests and storylines, or even garner you the best outcome in some other situations. I really wasn't expecting these creatures to shape the game's story as much as they did. It was a very pleasant surprise this year. Zoria, Age of Shattering. Zoria may not be the game of the year, and it may not go down in history as one of the best CRPGs of 2024, although it very much was one of the best CRPGs of 2024. But some of the things that it brought to the table were so unexpectedly good that I am now very interested in what Zoria's devs have in store for us. And one thing these devs totally nailed in my book was companions. That's right. This is how I want companions to be done in my RPGs. You have various classes with various talent trees, and they all bring a lot to the table other than their combat capabilities. Dungeons are actually pretty cool in Zoria, and how much you get to see of them and what you get to do depends on who you have in your party. Kingsmen, for example, can operate complex machinery, so they can open some of the more intricate gates in a dungeon and allow you to explore very big areas inside them. Areas where you might find bosses, NPCs, and even additional quests for you to start. Wizards can dispel illusions, priests can break cursed mists, lancers can tear down walls, etc. And I think we need to see more of this, class-specific stuff for you to engage with in every aspect of the gameplay, not just combat, questing, exploration, puzzles, and this is something that Zoria does. Also, camping is important in this game. And the things that you can do in your camp depend on who you have in your party. In Zoria, you have class-specific camp activities, and this makes your choice of companions matter. You can also send those companions who aren't in your party out on errands to bring loot and earn money, which is cool because I have always thought, what are the other guys doing when they are not with me? Are they just sitting on their asses doing nothing at camp? And the winner is... Zoria, Age of Shattering. Secondary mechanics are like sauces in food. They are supposed to accentuate the meal's original flavor. But put too much habanero sauce in your taco and that's the only flavor that you'll be able to think about for weeks. Secondary mechanics should serve to elevate the core gameplay experience, or better yet, blend together into it seamlessly. And out of the games that we played and reviewed this year, these are the ones that did a better job with that. Caves of Qud. This game has a broad arsenal of mechanics for you to play around with, and most of them are there for you to take on the game's challenges however you wish. Crafting various types of grenades or gun turrets, modifying your gear, cooking, trading, trampling down walls to get around the game's various locations, getting tech implants to enhance yourself. It's bonkers, and certainly more than enough to get Caves of Qud nominated for this category. Darkest Dungeon 2. Secondary mechanics are deceptively important in Darkest Dungeon 2. Matter of fact, this is not where you win this game. You may lose it here, but this is not where you win it. You win the game here, and here, and here. Choosing the right path on the map, spending your money wisely, preparing for the final act of the game, managing your companions' relationships, and making the most out of your stagecoach are all extremely important mechanics, even if they may not seem so for the new or dumb player. And I think this amounts to a very clever and super interesting game design. Dustland Delivery. It's not easy for me to tell where the core gameplay experience ends and secondary mechanics begin in this game. Dustland Delivery truly is what you make of it. Do you want to follow the yellow brick road of the main quest, much like you would in your average CRPG? Or let yourself loose in the world and wing it as a badass post-apocalyptic courier? Or raise a city from the ground up and turn it into a busy trade center? Do you want to dip your toes in all of these things? Well, the game has got you covered with an insane number of mechanics that add complexity and flavor to all of your endeavors. Crafting weapons, enhancing your lore, cooking, hunting, combat, foraging, trade, I could go on forever. And the beauty of it all lies in the fact that all of these things are optional activities, but they are also part of one great, big, beautiful, cohesive whole, and I can't speak highly enough of it. Outward. Surviving in the world of Outward is no trifling matter. Finding your place in the world and figuring out what's the best way for you to approach its challenges isn't easy, but you have a slew of things at your disposal to help you decide. Crafting weapons or enhancing the ones you already have is a crucial aspect of your character's progression. Cooking meals and remedies is an essential part of your survival, and brewing potions will surely make the difference in this all-encompassing grand adventure, so make sure you partake in all of it. Wild Frost. Wild Frost may not have too many secondary mechanics, but the ones it does have are brilliant, and they all serve to make the core gameplay experience juicier. The standout has to be the ability to equip several amulets on your creature characters. The way in which you can use these mechanics to strengthen your tactical design is abso-freaking-lutely beautiful and thoroughly deserving of a nomination for this category. Zoria, Age of Shattering. Zoria's core gameplay mix is nothing to write home about, I'll be honest with you, but the game's secondary mechanics inject a gratifying feeling of adventure to the experience, and they make everything you do in this game matter. Whether it's assigning tasks to your inactive companions, or cooking, or crafting gear, it's all stuff that you end up wanting to do rather than having to do, and that's usually a very good sign. And the winner is... Dustland Delivery. User experience. User experience encompasses everything really, but most people think of it as the ability to interact with the game in the most efficient way without having to figure out how. And of the games we played and reviewed this year, these are the ones that did a better job with this. Balatro. This is an unconventional game that is stupidly easy to pick up and understand immediately, and I think therein lies the secret of its success. It's also quick-paced and seamless. Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age's inventory management and trading systems were insanely ahead of their time. This game was more of a quantum leap in the user experience department than most people seem to give it credit for. Neverwinter Nights 2, Knights of the Old Republic, and Mass Effect are similar games that came out not long before Dragon Age Origins, and their inventory and trading systems feel old, primitive, dated. Dragon Age Origins, on the other hand, feels like it's still better in the user experience department than many of the games that are coming out these days. The Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge features an odd combat system and a very unique skill enhancement system. I had never really seen anything quite like it, and when I'm faced with something new like this, I get easily irritated and frustrated because it usually takes me some time to figure it out, but kudos to Fool's Theory for coming up with something that I had never seen before and yet felt completely familiar somehow. And the winner is... Dragon Age Origins. Sound effects and mix. To me, this is all about the immersion and the oh boy and oh wow factor. And of the games that I played and reviewed this year, these are the titles that did it best. Beneath Oresa. Darkest Dungeon 2. Graven. Knights of the Old Republic. Marvel Midnight Suns. And the winner is... Knights of the Old Republic. Music. It's not just about being lore consistent. A game's soundtrack has to tap into the game's theme on a deeper level, like Dragon Age Origins' title screen piece, which gets darker and more sinister as it goes, until it reaches a climax and dies out in a peaceful, almost soothing tune, only to progressively get darker again, which sort of mirrors the never-ending cycle of the Blight and how they are always defeated by the Grey Wardens to usher in a new era of peace. And as it happens with secondary mechanics, they should serve to accentuate the dramatic intention of the game's passages without stealing the spotlight from the action or the dialogue. And these are the games that did a better job with all of that out of the games that we played and reviewed this year. Cobalt Core. Dragon Age Origins. Knights of the Old Republic. What? Marvel Midnight Suns. Vault of the Void. And the winner is... Knights of the Old Republic. Voice acting. I have become a sucker for this in the last 2 decades. I admit that I want my cinematic experience, and I can always appreciate when games go the extra mile to deliver it properly with good voice acting. Of the games that I played and reviewed this year, these are the nominees. Dragon Age Origins.
Know this. All Grey Wardens can sense Darkspawn. Whatever their cunning, I guarantee they won't take us by surprise. That's why I'm here.
You see, Sir Knight, we might die, but we'll be warned about it first.
That is reassuring.
Hard West 2.
So I've rustled up a posse to go after it. Flynn. Bit on the green side, but probably the smartest of us all. Clearly, I don't keep her around for her fists, but she's got darker talents. The kind that don't bear dwelling on much. Laughing Deer. Don't mind the name. Nothing funny about this one. An exile, even among his own tribe. What he did, I do not know. But I do know what he does, and what he does ain't pretty.
Knights of the Old Republic.
It is the Sandrels who have started this, not I.
And here I thought you would blame us if we failed. It seems everyone is responsible for your actions, except for you.
I don't need to stand here and listen to such impertinence.
I'm impressed, Carl. That interjection was very Jedi-like.
What can I say? You pick up a few things.
The Lithorian has decided I am to be an expensive purchase. He does this out of greed, and not out of knowledge of my true capabilities. Advisement. I have observed him. He is a coward, and will be responsive to aggressive bargaining.
Victor Schultz. The thaumaturge.
A bouquet of sweat, shit, and puke. And piss, thanks.
But it's Worsaw's piss and puke, interwoven with the aroma of steadfastness and heroism.
I strongly believe that a person is innocent until proven guilty.
Of course. So, we're at an impasse. What do you propose?
And the winner is... Dragon Age Origins. Graphics. To me, this will never be about how detailed this or that shit looks in X resolution with Y FPS. That doesn't really matter to me as much. I'm more interested in the immersion and world building aspect of the art package. I care about lived-in cities, items and vehicles that look and feel unique and consistent with the game's setting. Places that I would like to visit if they were real, and things and vehicles and even clothes that I would like to own. And that's why I've chosen these titles out of the ones I played and reviewed this year. Alaloth, Champions of the Four Kingdoms. Beneath Oresa. Beyond Galaxy Land. Darkest Dungeon 2. Marvel Midnight Suns. The Thaumaturge. And the winner is... Darkest Dungeon 2. Performance and stability. Last year Everspace 2 took this one home, because the game not only performed flawlessly, but I can also imagine how hard that was to achieve in a game where there's spaceships and gun turrets everywhere shooting at you, explosions left, right, and center, and breakneck speed space stunts through detailed locations. This year we had many cart battlers that performed flawlessly, and that's good and all, but I'm more interested in games that were busy with action, particles, and effects in which none of that affected the performance. And the nominees this year are Alaloth, Champions of the Four Kingdoms, Skald, Against the Black Priory, Gordian Quest, and the winner is... Alaloth, Champions of the Four Kingdoms. Only the 2 big awards remain, so without further ado, here are the nominees out of the games that we played and reviewed this year for Best Game of 2024 that actually came out in 2024. Caves of Qud, Dustland Delivery, Tactical Breach Wizards, The Thaumaturge, Wantless, and the winner is...
The suspense is terrible.
Caves of Qud. And here's the big one. The nominees for the Ye Olde Entertainment Game of the Year Award. Of the games that we played and reviewed this year, these are the nominees. Caves of Qud, Dragon Age Origins, Knights of the Old Republic, Outward, and the winner is...
The suspense is terrible.
Now that is unsurprising.
Arshera, leave the past where it falls.
Absolutely not! We are ridiculously awesome.
Just like you guys for watching this far. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thank you for watching all the way up until now. If you like what you are seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to avoid the usual YouTube shenanigans. Come check us out on Discord if you don't mind all the boomer talk that goes on there. I personally love it and wouldn't change it for anything. And share the video if you thought it was cool. Bye everyone.
You're excused. You can go back to playing video games.